Hey, real quick, somebody say to me, "Hey, Rocksteady, just say it's Jason Todd."
Hey, Rocksteady, just say it's Jason Todd.
No, and that's how Arkham Knight was made.
God damn.
Arlen, I did it last night with Khan and Into Darkness.
God damn you.
Or if you're on the DC app, you can vote to see if they want to kill Jason Todd again.
No. It's not. Okay, everyone misconstrued that. It's not voting to kill him again. They're redoing the same poll from that time period to see what contemporary readers would do then.
Okay.
It's gonna be the same.
Well, yeah.
No. Everybody voted predominantly to spare him.
Oh, I thought the original vote was to kill either Alfred Gordon or Jason.
No, this poll is like Batman fails,
Just
Joker
Jason?
kills Jason, or Batman rescues him and Joker fails. And like 70% of the vote is Joker fails and Batman saves him. And that's probably because Jason has become so popular in the last decade and a half, 2 decades that like people would rather not him go through that again.
Yeah, well, they sort of started to turn him into like a pseudo Deadpool in many ways. Him being like a ninja with swords and.
I said last night he's Bucky.
Oh yeah.
I mean, fair, but I mean, people like him, but like, he's still kind of a dick. Like,
but
that's the
he's an
part of
asshole.
him that's like great. Like he has a reason to be a dick, though.
right? Yeah, no,
He was murdered and
he's
not avenged.
justified in it now. So
Yeah, and we actually discussed this last night, saying like of all the people that Batman should have killed, like Joker's probably the only one.
A number one.
Yeah, and like that's covered in Dark Knight Returns when he's like, I think actually in the movie I think the line is different. In the movie I actually think the delivery is better. He says, "All the people I've killed by letting you live." I'm like, ooh. And Peter Weller's like dynamite delivery. But hi everybody, I'm Connor McGraw, and this is our After Dark special. This is our Stan Lee memorial episode because, as everyone knows, he did pass away earlier this week at the fucking legendary age of 95. That guy almost made it to 100.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Second time we've ever done this, but it's definitely earned this time.
Yeah, I mean George Romero is George Romero's contribution to pop culture is very singular, but it's very encompassing. Whereas Stan Lee has like, holy shit, like Stan Lee's fingerprints are on a lot of stuff that we care about.
Yeah, like we're all going to share our stories, kind of how we came to know him, and I'm sure they're all going to be very different. So, yeah, it should be a good show.
Since Hunter has to dip out of here a little earlier than the rest of us, he's going to go first. Hey, look, Hunter Davenport's here.
Yeah, I'm here. Hey, your boy.
Who else is here?
Arlen Haro, as usual,
And Lou Gonzalez.
No Eric tonight. No Chris still, and no Alan tonight. So.
No.
No Chris still.
Chris exploded years ago. I think.
No, Chris has become the slumbering demon. Well, anybody who listens to the Comedy Button will basically get this. He's become our fanfare.
Yep.
Fanfare, Lord of Flame. So Hunter, what is your earliest memory of Stan Lee?
I mean, I think I've talked this before elsewhere, but like Marvel is kind of like the company that did it for me. It was like the first kind of like the first real time I ever really got into comic books was a Fantastic Four comic, which is hilarious considering my feelings now. But like Stan Lee was just present like in my childhood, and like I think my earliest memory is like, what was it? I remember Spider-Man 2 was kind of like
Hey, the movie?
Fucking age gap here is gonna be.
Oh my god, that just hurt my soul.
I'm 23 years old. Spider-Man 2 was like the first time where I was like, oh, Stan Lee's like a legend. He's like this. It's
funny because he was a young mummy back then too.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was a young old man.
On Laser Time, they did their episode for him too, and Chris Antista not only refers to him as the young mummy, but he's like Stanley is like your grandpa's boyfriend. Like,
that's like X-Men and like stuff. X-Men is like a team I hold kind of close to my heart, and like, which is hilarious.
That got you into Stan Lee, like that made you aware of his presence, is like the two teams that Marvel felt necessary to just like toss to the side in the decades to come.
Well, they tossed them to the side because of the sale that he helped make.
Yeah.
Oh
man.
Yeah.
Well, he did what he had to keep it afloat.
Yeah, and like I know the relationship with Stan and Marvel was weird in the 2000s. I'm not sure how it was repaired.
Dollars?
Yeah, probably money to do it. Yeah. Also, making a show with Pam Anderson that doesn't do well.
Oh yeah.
I suppose we'll talk about the things that Stan Lee did in the late 2000s that are a little bit weird.
Mm-hmm.
Like that episode of Entourage he's in?
No, I'm also referring to Who Wants to Be a Superhero?
Oh, I watched that show.
Okay, that show was great. I don't care what anyone said.
And that show is actually pretty cool, but the payoff was bullshit.
Yeah.
I remember seeing the guy that could hold his breath underwater for like an insane amount of time.
That was a really good show. I loved that show.
Wait. Are we talking about the reality TV show or the show where he went around the world like finding people who had like really superhuman abilities? Because there's two.
That one.
That's the one I was. It was like a sci-fi network show, right?
Who Wants to Be a Superhero was a reality contest show where people came in dressed as superheroes they created, and they had to participate on these like fucking Road Rules reality.
I never saw that. I saw the other one.
I'm thinking of the one with Endorsionist, and he would like send her out.
The winner of the competition would basically get to be like either appear in a comic book or have their own comic book launch. And I think like he ended up just like having a cameo in. I think he cameoed in something like Marvel.
Right. I do remember this happened. Now that you say that,
I remember the other show, the one that Arlen was talking about, where they were looking for people with powers.
Like they found a guy who free climbed, and they called him a monkey man because that's how monkeys climb up rocks.
The only one I can remember is there was a guy that somehow created electrical pulses, and they were trying to figure out how he did that.
And there was a guy who was kind of Daredevil, because he would like use like clicks and beeps to like see, because he could hear it come back to him. He figured out how to do the whole sonar thing. That was an interesting show to watch. Obviously. Does anybody want to share their other story? I guess.
For me, I don't know about you, Connor, because we're about the same age. The first time I saw Stan and recognized him as like a being was his, I guess the interstitials in between like the Fantastic Four, Spider-Man, and X-Men cartoons back in the 90s. That's where like I first heard like, was it like Mighty Marvel, whatever, and him saying Excelsior, and he was kind of this front man introducing the episodes. And,
I remember that.
Yeah, it was like the Saturday morning cartoon for, I think it was Fox was where all these cartoons were showing up on. And he would introduce the episodes. And he would be like, oh, and like in this episode, like Spider-Man goes up against Kraven the Hunter, and will he be able to outwit? And it's, that very Stan Lee, everything is crazy alliteration. And then like end it with like, I can't remember what the saying. It's like Mighty Marvel something. And then he would just like end it with Excelsior. And then they would cut into the episode. And this is back when he had the grays on the side, like Mr. Fantastic, and he was more dark on the top with his hair. So this is probably around the same time as Mallrats.
That sounds right, I guess. Yeah, that's interesting. I think my story is actually pretty similar, because the Spider-Man show they did, Spider-Man, that one, he showed up on an episode,
Yes, I actually watched that animation a little while ago. It was like the interdimensional episode.
Yeah,
Wow, that was really fucking weird.
With Madam Spider.
Yes.
And I think that's when I first remember, like, knowing who he is, like, knowing what his name is, and, like, knowing who that is. So,
are you talking about the episode of Spider-Man, the animated show, where Stan Lee appears?
Yes.
Yes, and he's on Spider-Man's back.
Like, now, how do I get down?
He's like, I guess I'll just wait here for the Fantastic Four to show up.
I'll wait here for the Fantastic Four to show up. In a very similar way, one of my first memories of seeing him on any form of media, and Lou, you might be one of the only people who remembers this because you're closer to my age. I had the X-Men Night of the Sentinels VHS that I got from a fucking Pizza Hut giveaway or some shit.
Oh my god, I had that as well. It was the black VHSs.
VHS.
Yes.
And on there was a little featurette where Stan Lee described basically how he sees and conceptualizes superheroes. And this stuck in my head for years, and I saw him repeat this gag in an even funnier way on stage in a video I found recently. He basically, I think he came up with the idea of Archangel is because the idea of Superman flying with no means of propulsion drove him insane.
Oh, that reminds me of hearing him talk about how he has Thor fly, which is goddamn hilarious.
Yeah. Basically, he said, he's like, I don't like how Superman just flies. He just does this. And just this weird fucking pose. And he just flies. He's like, I don't get it. And so, he goes into detail about, all these all the X-Men, basically, how their ideas and concepts came to be. And I think after that, it was, fucking Mallrats.
Yeah.
And in Mallrats, he has a beard.
Oh, he looks straight up pimply. He looks like he's almost Hugh Hefner-ish in that.
Yeah. Yes.
It's that same, he's got that kind of late 80s, early 90s giant aviators with I think he has a red smoking jacket on, a red sport coat.
Something. Yeah, he's got a charcoal beard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's got this big old youthful, but youthful for then smile. He was in his 70s then too. Oh my god, I can't believe how
he'd have to be in his 60s then.
But here's the thing though, he looked healthy though. Honestly,
we might have lost Connor again.
Yeah.
He's looked pretty healthy until maybe the last 3 years.
Yeah.
And his wife passed away a year ago, maybe a little bit more.
Yeah, the only time it ever got a little bit weird was if he took his glasses off in the last few years, because why is that eye drifting a little bit?
But I know I've seen him. He did Comic Book Ben a couple years ago, and he looked fine on that. Yeah, obviously he's mostly sitting, but he only stopped doing the con circuit 3 years ago?
No, that sounds right, and I used to listen to Tell 'em Steve Dave, and they talked about having him on the show and how even when the camera was off, he was still kind of the same guy. He wasn't as energetic, but he was still an interesting person to be around.
He's the first, at least I can remember, that connected to me brand ambassador, and not even brand medium ambassador. He was comics for, I don't know, the better part of 50 years. He was the face of comic books for all comic books in all companies. And a lot of the reasons, obviously, we kind of hinted at, he made the deal that saved Marvel, which, you can say in hindsight, oh, they could have held on to it, but he sold them. He's the one who kind of saw that they could sell the rights to these properties for movies and TV shows.
Yeah.
And that kept that company afloat. They hit bankruptcy in the 90s. Well,
yes, that was partially that was Perlmutter because he kept them above water. He put them at right at drowning level. But he saved the company before kind of being kicked out, kind of.
Well, not to say he was probably not a very good CEO. He was a better spokesman.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to think. He was kind of a good like Carney-ish figure in many ways.
Yeah, I think of him as like a Carney. Like he's the guy that stands outside the carnival trying to get people in. He's
a barker. Yeah. But he was like the greatest of that, and he made you both want to be involved in comics and the cartoons and everything, but you also like felt excited that you were part of something.
Yeah, and I think that always that was always the reason that I think I connected more with Marvel. And then as I got older, it was more on the level of I can't relate to many of the DC characters, just on a personal level, but I can relate to just about all Marvel characters in some way. You know, I can find a way to relate to Ben Grimm. I can even relate to Sue or Johnny.
That goes to the whole Stan like thought process, like what Connor was saying about like the flying. He also was that way, and like, oh, I don't understand why these characters are in like small town USA or some other city. It's like, why are they not in New York? Yeah. Why are they not like in LA or Chicago or San Francisco or Boston? Like, it was a big difference of Marvel and DC is that like his characters were in the real world, and thus they could have the real world stuff more quickly at times work into the comics. And they also, I guess, at least from my memory, like early on, of the big two, they addressed in the creation of characters a lot of social issues. Like the X-Men are about, I don't think there's any way to think about them besides being about like homosexuality and coming out and hiding something.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. No, that's fair. And like at the time, I think. Race.
I can't remember what it was. It was a race thing a lot, but then it quickly turned.
Yes.
At some point,
it's evolved to fit the time period is, which I think that's why X-Men still holds up because it's. I mean, I'm not going to give all the credit to Stan, but
like he was very much also like a Steve Jobs character in the company.
Yes, definitely. He was very. I feel Steve Jobs is the perfect.
Yeah, he's a go do this thing, and then they did it. All right, we are awesome.
Yeah, you know, we've joked in the past about like, so what's that, Mom? Is that a new character? But it's true. Like, if he saw that somebody had something interesting, he would give his 2 cents, and he would take credit for his 2 cents. Sometimes a little bit too loudly, so that people thought it was his thing. But I think he saw it more as I'm part of this company, and we're all part of this company, and we're all in this together, right? we're all trying to do well, and I'm the boss, so I should get paid a little bit more because I'm the boss. Which I mean, I'm not gonna fault him for that.
It wasn't a him thing. It was also that was the industry at that time.
Yeah,
like you can go like, oh, Bob Kane gets creator credit for Batman. He did not create Batman. He gave it to somebody else and then took the credit for it. Like that was kind of an aspect of the industry at that time.
Mm-hmm.
And basically until like the 80s, until Image.
Yeah, that was just the industry. Like the boss was the boss, and if you did enough really special things, maybe you would get credit for it, but maybe you didn't.
You were a contractor, and everything you created while under your contract belonged to the company you worked for.
What about because my internet just keeps taking a shit? I'm sorry, but
yeah, that's fine. I think we kept it afloat, and I feel like it's still kind of the same if you're in the big two now. Like, I mean,
there's a little bit, yeah.
Like someone like Jessica Jones comes around, and nobody disputes that Brian Michael Bendis wrote that character and that she's one of his probably more well-known offspring.
I think that also is an aspect of the time we live in where there's more communication around, and then with like, oh, these are the writers I like when they write these characters. I know he made this character.
Mm-hmm. Are we discussing his position as like creator and co-creator?
Kind of.
Yeah, we're kind of on a tangent of like the whole. Well, sometimes Stan would take credit that wasn't necessarily his to take, but like that was just the industry at the time.
Yeah, and like I saw, I've mentioned him before, but his last name is very hard to pronounce. It has lots of I's, S's, and K's in it. Mark Krasinski. If you listen to this, I'm so sorry if that was a butchering of your last name. He and I were talking about this the other day, and it's very similar to like the Bill Finger Bob Kane thing. I think the Bill Finger Bob Kane is actually is more bitter, because like Bill Finger didn't really get recognized for his contributions to Batman until like the last decade.
Oh, maybe like the last 3 or 4 years.
Yeah,
to do a documentary.
Time before Bill Finger started to get like the credit he deserved for, because like I know like Stan Lee conceptualized Spider-Man, and Ditko is the one responsible for basically applying all the stuff that we really know and know about him.
Well, like I said, he's like the Steve Jobs of comics.
Yeah, and like whereas like Bob Kane came up with this like ludicrous concept for Batman that wouldn't have fucking worked.
No, Bob Kane was subcontracted.
Yeah, and Bill Finger was like, "Yeah, let me tinker with this," and like radically redesigned the entire thing. And now we have the Batman we have today. Like that situation, I think, is a little more extreme. Like,
and Finger also created like every other character in that original Batman.
Yeah, as far as I understand, like Stan Lee came up with the idea of like, I want a guy who has spider powers. He has strength proportionate to a spider. He can do this. He's a teenager. And Ditko took the ball and ran with it, as far as I understand.
Yeah. Yeah. Also, I feel like with Stan, you have to read between the lines, but like you can tell which characters were his characters, like were the characters where he was very hands-on, and which ones he had nothing to do with. Like I don't think he had anything to do with Ghost Rider, to be quite honest.
No.
But like if you ask him about Tony Stark, he has a lot to say about Tony Stark.
I think like what's funny is like I think Stan would be too preoccupied with like, why is his head on fire? Like what is the purpose of his head being on fire?
Was he affected by that bomb at all?
Yeah. Like there's a crude logic that you can see him trying to apply to stuff that he makes. Because there's a video that's making the rounds recently of him sitting there watching Todd McFarlane and Rob Liefeld draw, and like he's being a mentor, but he's also clowning these two in like the most kind way he can.
Well, he's also like always was like the biggest personality in the room. Like we're saying, he was a carnival, like a Carney Barker in the best possible way.
Yeah, well, he's had a personality and a cadence to the way he speaks. Like he's a fucking fossil. Like no one talks the way he does anymore. No one talks the way they did back when he was alive. Like everyone, he's maintained this old. I wouldn't say it's transatlantean. Like it's not that fast talky kind of like gangster talk. But it is it's like
news. It's like newsy almost.
Yes,
yeah, kind of.
But it worked. Like it was one of those things. Like that was his gimmick. Like he was very WWF. Like he created a character, a persona, and he carried Marvel on like with him with that persona for a long time.
Yeah.
Because I was saying before, I think you weren't here. Is like my first memories of him was he would used to introduce episodes for Spider-Man, Fantastic Four, X-Men. I'm trying to remember the other cartoons that they made in that time.
He's also the narrator of the he's the narrator of the Spider-Man game for PlayStation.
Oh yeah, I think he did like the first couple of them, or did he do the first one and then what's his name from Ash vs. the Evil Dead did the others?
Oh, Bruce Campbell.
Yeah, I think Bruce Campbell did like a couple of them too.
Bruce Campbell did the Spider-Man movie tie-in games. I think Stan Lee did the Spider-Man game that I think was ported to N64 as well. It was Spider-Man on PS1 that had like.
Is that the one where you could wear the different suits?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. Okay, I remember that one.
You couldn't hit the ground because there was some kind of toxic cloud that would kill you because they could only render tops of buildings. But I think that one you fought like a Carnage symbiote, Dr. Octopus.
Yes, I think symbiotes were a huge part of that game.
Yeah, because I remember I heard a lot of this on Laser Time recently because they got this before I did. That he narrates like there's a whole section where he's like, here it is, everyone, Spider-Man and Venom. Like, I love doing his voice, but I'm probably not going to do too much of it after this episode because I just don't feel like
like
it's a parody anymore.
If there's a time to retire that voice, it probably is now.
I did say on Facebook I was going to retire the voice. George doesn't want me to, and I'll do it when I play Dark Souls with him, but I'm certainly not doing it on the air this episode.
I think there are times when like it would be appropriate and fun.
Well, because like the joke between like the joke I was like doing is like I created Spider-Man with no help from anybody else. It's like no, that's not what he said, but it's a way to clown on him.
I actually remember it was actually the first con I ever went to. Me and my brother went, and we were able to get into a panel with Stan talking. He was signing for Virgin Comics, and one of the. I'm sorry, what?
Who?
Yes, exactly. So like Virgin Mobile, like decided at some point to try to make a comic book line.
Dear God,
I don't remember who was on the panel with him, but I know that Gotham Chopra was the moderator, who is Deepak Chopra's son, which he again moderated the other people that were there, but it was a separate panel where it was Grant Morrison and Deepak Chopra were teaming up to write a comic book on the Hindu like religious book.
I have trouble believing anything you just said.
It was real.
Thing I've ever heard, though.
But the Stan Lee one was interesting because he talked about, again, like I said before, the Thor thing and his complaint about Superman flying. So his idea for Thor was that he would whip around the hammer so fast and he could like then throw the hammer.
That is I think that's the video I pulled up recently.
Yeah, and the wristlet would carry him.
Yes.
That's one of the stories he would tell. And his Spider-Man story was that he took the idea, went to Kirby, and was like, I don't want him to look like Captain America. And then Kirby showed him an image, and he's like, this is goddamn Captain America. And then was like, all right, now I'm going to go give this to Ditka, or to Ditko.
That's a really funny statement.
Yeah. He's like, yeah, I want a teenager. I don't want somebody who looks like a big beefcake. Like, I don't remember the words he said, but he's just like,
I'm imagining him doing that with every character now, though. Like, I want you to draw Doctor Strange. Do not make him look like Hulk.
Makes him big and green.
Yes.
But he was great in that panel.
Jack.
I can't remember, but like he did at some point he like went to the moderator towards the end. He's like, "Oh, I'm very glad that you were the moderator today. Usually it's Kevin Smith, and I can only handle so many fucks in a panel." Like, and this was
quote.
Yeah, this was like 2000. I don't even remember when the first Comic-Con was. Like, had to be like 06 or something like that. So it was a long time ago, but it was one of the most interesting things, and the fact that I was able to see him in one of those things is something I'll never forget.
That's like I didn't have regrets about meeting like my heroes until Carrie Fisher died.
Yeah,
and now it's like Carrie went, and now Stan went. I'm like, I gotta fucking meet Mark Hamill at some point.
Yeah, both of those two are kind of big regrets for me as well.
Sadly, me and my brother started to move, and where we were sitting in an aisle, like in an aisle where we were towards the outside, and we moved to go inside to leave, and then Stan walked right by where we were sitting, and we're like, shit, if we did not move, we would have been able to shake his hand.
Oh my God.
But
I've had like just as far as like meeting people I'm really into, I would go to a lot of independent wrestling shows for a bit. Like I also went to the Dragon Gate shows, and those were fantastic times to like meet people you kind of got, semi-star like stars in your eyes. Or like, because it's such an intimate atmosphere. Like you go to the bathroom, and all of a sudden, like the guy who wrestled 2 matches before, who you're really into, just like walks in behind you and starts pissing next to you. You're like,
oh yeah, I've only done that twice, and I don't know if you've ever heard Starland Ballroom, Connor.
Oh yeah.
I went. So that was right by where I grew up in Jersey.
Yeah, I saw 3 there.
So I saw Judas Priest there, and I got to meet.
Wow, that's a better story than mine.
But this was not with Rob Halford. This was with Ripper Owens. Yeah. So, but I still got to meet them all. I got all their autographs and take pictures, and then I met another band there, and then I don't have the picture, but me and my friend took a picture of one of them who was beyond shit-faced, and it was hilarious.
And I would love to met Stan in like an intimate situation like that, where it's a moderately sized crowd where the venue is small enough, the event isn't as large where you could just like bump into him.
I feel like he was one of those guys where like no matter who you were, he'd make you feel great.
Yeah, that was something I've heard in the last few days from people who worked with him, is that like actually on the Laser Time episode, this guy they had on who worked for Marvel for a bit said that like when he interviewed him at the end of the interview, Stan said like, "You're a very good interviewer," and in the back of his head, he's like, "I feel like he might say it to everybody." He's like, "But I also feel like he actually means it, and it's very sincere."
That's the kind of heartwarming stories that we need in this world.
Yeah, and like it's just like, and yes, that story last year came out about maybe he may or may not have inappropriately groped, like, was it a nurse or a masseuse?
Yeah. He's 95 goddamn years old and doesn't know what he is, probably.
I told
this also might have happened in his 30s, which was God knows how long ago, when that kind of behavior was, I mean, not just accepted, but like
he had a nurse in his 30s that lived with him.
Never mind. I don't know the story. I have no idea. Like, I don't know when.
Yeah, no, I think it was supposedly like a live-in nurse.
If something happened when he was in his 30s, it's not okay. But at the same time, like,
it would have been the 1940s or 50s.
Yeah,
and
like
life was so different. I can't actually fucking imagine it.
Right.
Well, it goes into what we
said before. That's not an excuse, but it's certainly a way to look at that and go, it doesn't make him evil. It makes him part of a very larger society that had had problematic habits.
Yeah. It was the norm of that society that changed over time. And maybe he was part of that change.
Yeah, and also, like, Lou, you and I specifically are part of a generation that used to drop the word, and I'm going to say it because there's nothing, drop the word faggot all the time because it was fun and stupid and we didn't realize exactly what it meant. And then years later, we also, along with lots of people, were like, that word isn't really cool and we're really kind of rubbing people the wrong way and we should probably drop it and get rid of it and not use it.
Oh, yeah. Like, again, from watching the cartoon show, we've watched a couple of cartoons we watched one cartoon from the 90s, and it's just like, oh my God, all this is gay jokes. It's like when people talk about Friends.
Yeah,
Friends is like horrible now.
Movie Dumpster has been
90s.
Oh, yeah, Movie Dumpster's been very eye-opening in that regard because we'll watch movies from the 90s and we're like, the amount of just gay jokes that fly just so loose, hard and loose. Like, they're left and right, and a lot of it is like really just it's not even like gay humor is a thing. It's not gay humor. It's like gay. Ew.
Yeah. Well, I think the race comedy of the 80s was replaced by like gay jokes in the 90s.
Yeah, and like watching any stand-up special from Eddie Murphy from the 80s.
Oh, that's a perfect person to talk about.
Really
yeah,
fun until you get to the point where he's dropping jokes about HIV and gay people and not wanting to shake hands with them and some shit like that. And it's just like, oh wow, this aged terribly.
Yeah. That was the same time when they thought AIDS was cancer and that it could spread just by like breathing on somebody. So yeah. Dark period.
Anyway, no, Stan always to me came off as someone who really, 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 really liked his fans.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I do want to bring up, we talked about it last night a little bit, but like, one, his name isn't actually Stan Lee, it's Stan Lieber. A big part of the story that's forgotten is the fact that a lot of these original comic book creators, including Stan, were all Jewish and they were not allowed to write in newspapers and magazine and whatsoever. So the only places they could work, writing and drawing, was in comic strips.
Yep.
And they turned it into books.
And we talked about that last night because Bill Maher is a fuckwad.
Mm-hmm.
Who shouldn't have opened his mouth, who decided to...
I almost don't even want to talk about it because it's so fucking
over it one
absurd.
more time, because here's the thing. Bill Maher used the death of a beloved pop culture icon to get himself a few minutes of media attention, and that's it. There was no higher purpose for it. There was no smart purpose for it. He trolled and got a few minutes of everyone going, "Hey, shut the fuck up." And that's really all it is.
It does. The only other thing I did see was, did you guys see the Army Hammer thing?
Yeah.
That was like, I kind of get the point he's making, but it's like, just shut up. Shut up.
That fixed itself because
that fixed itself.
I can't remember who shut him up, but somebody hit him hard.
Neil Gaiman shot back at Bill Maher, and somebody else chimed in was like, fucking Neil Gaiman is the only he the only comic book artist to get on the New York Times bestsellers?
Yeah,
Gaiman, yeah.
But Watchmen,
But there are a bunch of people.
100. Like, there's a lot of people who have gotten accolades for writing comics.
Yeah.
Like, high accolades. So Bill Maher doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about.
Yeah.
He just represents it again. Like, he just commented on the movies. It's like, there have been many, many people that have said they have become scientists or learned to read with comics.
Like,
actually, and I've said it before, the creator of Dark Souls had trouble reading, and like he basically absorbed literature through art.
Yeah,
like that's how he learned. That's how he learned to decipher stories, and that's why. And I don't know if it's specifically comic books, but I know he did say like he learned to extrapolate story elements through visuals.
Yeah.
So that's why his storytelling technique in Dark Souls is to just rely on like environments and atmospheres and context clues to basically fill in the story through visuals, and that's it, and very little dialogue and narration. There's that too. Like, again, Bill Maher, he made a very uneducated statement just to get himself a couple attention, like I said, a couple minutes of attention, and it kind of worked, but then like people were immediately afterwards like, just shut the fuck up.
It's not just that. I think he's a fucking asshole for one, and I think he's jealous of nerd culture. I think quite a bit. And my evidence for that is like he said a similar thing about Spock very shortly after Nimoy died, which I remember pissed me off just as much. And I think it's part of why I stopped paying attention to this fuckface. And he was like, now everybody worries about, people are worried about, what Spock does on TV, which, okay, that's a dated reference, Mr.
Spock on television in 40 years.
He hasn't been in television since an episode of Next Generation.
Oh my god.
But it's like, I think he doesn't understand geek culture and sci-fi and things of that nature. They have had moments in time where some of the best literature ever produced has been made.
He's part of that class of older adult who seem to still think that like video games and comic books and sci-fi and fantasy and like probably horror to an extent are all for either children or adolescents,
and he's weirdos,
and has completely slept through the entire like generation where that matured and became an audience for it's like the audience became adults.
Like legitimately, people
there are both sides of the spectrum where there's stuff for kids and there's stuff for adults.
Like my wife did like a stint at NASA last year, and there are legitimately people there that got into that field because of watching Star Trek and Star Wars. Yeah. Probably a lot of Star Trek itself specifically.
My dad became a licensed boat captain because of Captain Kirk.
Yeah.
From his own words. Like
there's so many stories like that. Like the first woman in space, I think, was a huge Star Trek fan. Like that woman who recently went up, and she got up there, and then she dressed as Captain Janeway. Like,
and it connects. Like they legitimately the trailer for Captain Marvel that came out. When they announced it on Good Morning America, they were in the Air and Space Museum in DC and did it with a bunch of kids at a NASA camp there.
Oh, like awesome.
Because like they know like these are like sci-fi and comic books of people, especially like women or people of color dealing with science and space and all this stuff, is inspiring and like is reading.
Like, does Bill Maher know what the fuck Watchmen is?
No, he has no clue.
Even though it'll be on his network.
Like to him, I guarantee him, comic books are like Archie or something like that. Like
he probably thinks that comics are not, or he probably thinks Marvel and DC have nothing, have everything in common with like Marmaduke. There's no difference.
I think he sees it more as like the Twitter hate that he sees online, and that is all he sees. Like he sees the angry nerd in his basement typing.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
But, and then he gets but he has that like that old man like only like losers are into that like fat
nerds.
Exactly.
It's so fucking dumb, especially when you know who he is and like when you know his deeper backstory. It's like, shut the fuck up, dude, you Catholic altar boy bullshit person.
Oh yeah, we
said last night, like people on the right hate him because they think He represents what all like leftists and liberals represent, and leftists and liberals hate him because he makes everyone else look terrible.
Yeah.
He's another one. He's in that same.
He's like the worst kind of centrist that exists because he truly stands for nothing. Like he just talks to get attention. That's really about it. He's like Bill O'Reilly.
He's a professional troll.
Yeah. When I was a teenager, I was like, oh, this guy's really like standing up like against like, you know, people who are trying to make America get dumber. And then as I got older, like, oh no, he's just an asshole. He's just a shit.
Like Michael Moore.
Oh god!
Like tiered on the brink of like being maybe like a rational voice for like a generation, but then it's like, nah, you're just a fucking ambulance chaser.
Yeah,
like you make documentaries that are immediately following tragedies, so you can spread your version of the of the message out there. Anyway, it's I wouldn't call it propaganda, but it's very one sided every time he does something like that.
Oh yes.
Yeah. Well, he's also. He has fallen into a trap of just making the same thing over and over again. Like he used to be revolutionary in the documentary field.
Bowling for Columbine, if he had stayed there, I think maybe he might have come out the other end looking better. But like, if you go back and watch Fahrenheit 9/11 now, you're like, this is every Reddit crawling, 4chan dwelling, like basement crawling conspiracy theory that has ever come forward about this shit, and none of it really has a leg to stand on outside of a few theories that have some holes in them, and a few kind of coincidental stuff. Like a lot of it, like complete paranoia.
Well, like even if you go back further to his first documentary, Roger and Me, which is just about him trying to get an interview with the head of Chevrolet at the time, so he can ask him like, "Why did you fire all those people? Like, why? I want a solid answer, like why you did this." He wouldn't even give him like the, shitty newspaper answer, well, we had to cut jobs to save money. Like he just wanted an answer, and he wanted it said to his face. And it's a whole movie about him trying to get that answer. And it's fascinating to watch even now. Because it kind of pre-tells a lot of what's going to happen in America over the next 30 years.
There may have been a time, and this would be the last I speak of this fuckbag, there may have been a time where like Bill Maher had said a few things here and there that I laughed at. But collectively throughout my life, I don't think I've given too much of a shit about Bill Maher, and I especially won't give a shit about him now. And quite frankly, nobody asked him to give his opinion on a guy who just died, an entire section of the global population, not just America. So yeah, Bill Maher's a fucking idiot, and that's that.
Yeah, and I'm sorry I allowed him to corrupt our tribute to Stan Lee.
Can I talk about the time that Stan Lee was on Entourage with Sasha Grey?
Yeah, that's great. That's great.
What?
That's fantastic. That is two ends of a spectrum.
Well, I mean, he did. I'm gonna say he tickled that spectrum, but that's a little too on the nose. He dabbled in that spectrum when he made what the
Stripperella.
Stripperella,
right?
Starring Pamela Anderson.
Her second foray into the comic book world.
There's a disconnect in my brain there, but yeah, that's right. He did do Stripperella, which
that's after she did Barbed Wire, I believe.
Isn't even around anymore. Stan Lee outlived Spike TV.
He outlived like everybody. I have seen there's a hilarious meme of like somebody doing the Mortal Kombat, the crawl up, and just Betty White on the one side crawling up the ladder.
I mean,
because I can't believe he outlived what's his name? That was Batman.
Adam West.
Adam West, because he passed away 2 years ago.
Yeah. Isn't Burt Ward still alive?
Yeah, but Burt Ward was like 10, 15 years younger.
He was a fucking child for Batman. Yeah. I can't Stan Lee. He did fucking. Well, I mean, he outlasted pretty much all of his peers.
Who else is alive from that era?
I don't know.
I don't think anybody is. There's probably barely people alive from the era after him.
To lose him and Ditko in the same year is pretty. I mean, I want to use the word spectacular, because who would think that the two of them would have made it this far?
Yeah.
Also, it sucks that Spider-Man's two dads had to go in the same year. I'll be right back. I gotta run and pee.
Yeah.
Keep going.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know where to go from. Yeah. It's pretty amazing that like you made it to 95, and I don't know if Lou, if you have this, but like for me, it's sadder when somebody dies at 96 than at 95. I don't know why. It's also sadder to me, like if somebody dies 2 days before their birthday than 2 days after.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Like I don't know. There's something about that.
It's somehow like the evenness of it.
Uh-huh.
Like I don't know. Like I don't know. It's hard to like be sad in a way because again, he lived for so long. Like I could only hope to live to 95 years old.
Right. Yeah.
And I'll never live in the quality of life of Stan Lee.
Yeah, definitely. Like 95 is huge. He straddled two very different time periods, and like if you think about that, when he was 10, he knew people that grew up during like the West, during like American expansionism and
Actually, I'm terrible at math, so I'm trying to figure out when he was born.
He would have
20s?
been born 1923. So like if he had a 50-year-old relative, like his relative knew somebody who probably
his grandfather was alive during the Civil War.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. Like, yeah.
Probably fought in the Civil War. Well, probably was not in America, but like was alive.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like it's crazy. He might have a relative who I don't know his actual like European background, but maybe he had someone who died in a pogrom. Which is sad, but it's just a reality of Europe at the time.
No, he was only like a month, like 2 months away from his birthday.
Yeah. That is also kind of sad, but yeah, like. But again, like 95 is insane. Really kind of crazy.
He's Romanian Jewish.
Okay.
Parent. So he's Romanian ethnically.
Interesting.
Yeah, his parents are both immigrants.
Yeah. I mean, he's so yeah, he's a first generation American.
He's first generation America that was born in the 20s, and then was a teenager during the Depression.
I'm not going to say the political thing that I want to say right now, but it's there for you to find if you want to. So yeah. People out there, just think about what you're saying when you say some things. So yeah.
It's hard to talk about like he did so much in the industry, in the comic industry alone, but taking that the idea of taking those IPs and doing other things with them was a lot to do with him as well, like the cartoons, the movies, and selling them to kind of hold the comics afloat every time that like the stuff was going down. And then again, he used to work for DC, and he went and left and made Marvel kind of, I would say, like sort of similarly to what happened with Image.
Yeah, kind of.
Because like it was him and a couple other people left DC, right?
That's my understanding, but it wasn't DC at the time. It was Timely.
No, yeah, it was.
Timely.
Yeah, Timely, and then Marvel was originally. What the hell was her name?
Or no, it was DC. It was no.
Yeah, Marvel became Timely.
It was, what was it? It was actually.
Or no, Timely became Marvel. I mean,
it was called Detective. It was, I believe, it was something like that. Or what was it?
No, DC had like another name before that.
It was like American Comics or something like that. Something to that effect. I can't remember what their name was, but they weren't. DC was on their logo, but they weren't known as DC really at the time. But yeah, then Timely, which was just like a magazine that put out horror books and like westerns, but they didn't do superhero books. And then Stan came over and he pitched Fantastic Four eventually.
Was it Fantastic Four first or Cap?
It was, Cap came first, but Cap was kind of retired after World War II.
Yes, yeah. Fantastic Four was their first kind of sci-fi superhero thing.
Yeah.
And then it was Spider-Man after that?
Yeah, because they tried to do Cap in the 50s, but it didn't
with
work.
Another character. It was another character, though.
Yes, it was the second Cap, and it didn't work because there were no more Nazis at the time. Well, there were Nazis, but they weren't going to have him fight those Nazis.
No, they would have been fighting Russians, which I'm sure they did a little bit, but...
Yeah, well, I mean, they could have had him fighting white supremacists, but this was America in the 50s, so nobody would have been up for that. It just wasn't something that American brains could have handled at the time. I really don't think so. But yeah, like they couldn't really do that, and I don't think Russians at the time were as interesting of a villain, because and the Cold War was kind of boring, I guess. They found a way to make it interesting, partially because of James Bond. I think that was a big part of it. The big, secret layers and world-destroying technology and all that. I think that made Cold War villains more interesting. I think that's a big reason for why characters like Black Widow and characters like the Mandarin were able to work.
Mm-hmm.
But they wouldn't have worked in the 50s, which is interesting. Like, if they had tried starting in the 50s, I don't think it would have had the same impact. I think Marvel kind of needed to start in the 60s, which is fascinating when you think about it that way. Because we know DC, they did fine enough in the 50s. But then the Wortham stuff and is Batman gay or not? He was.
I side with Neil Gaiman, or not Neil Gaiman, on with Grant Morrison. That it doesn't make sense.
I lied. I had to go take a mean shit.
Yeah, I was sort of like, that wasn't a Lou. I don't mean that like literally, like within the fiction of the world.
Oh yeah, I know
they weren't gay, but to the writers who were actually writing it, yes, they were gay. They absolutely were gay.
Oh wait, where are we now?
Talking about Batman being gay.
Batman and Robin.
Oh, okay. I know. We talk about this shit on this show. Batman's sexual orientation is Gotham City. That's it.
Yeah.
and I heard that was a Kevin Smith thing I once heard him say, and I agree with this too. Is that Batman is a little gay, but not in almost platonic way, because it's almost like he prefers the company of men, but is still sexually attracted to women.
Right. So here's the little caveat I have to give. Batman has changed a lot. The Batman of the 50s isn't the same character. Like, he's not.
No, he couldn't be.
Like, there's actually a guy who wrote a book about all the different eras of Batman, dissecting them all, and sort of giving a sense of what all the differences are. And the 50s Batman is just a completely different
Psychology of Batman, because that book is like 15 feet away from me.
I think it might be that one. It's more like a historical perspective. Like,
okay, I have a book called The Psychology of Batman. And it's fucking amazing. I
think the writer of that, he edited this book.
Shit.
But yeah, like it's. And I remember listening to an interview with the author, and he talked about having to, to cover the 50s, he had to read every book that was put out in the 50s.
Oh, and my God.
When you read all of them, it's like, I don't care what, was it Gaiman or whichever one. I don't care what any writer working now says. If you read all of them, it's very clear that Batman and Robin are in a secret gay relationship, and it is a metaphor for actual life as a gay writer at the time.
Interesting.
Yeah, and it's just there. Like, it's not gonna be canon. Like,
you're not gay in the universe, basically. And like I said, like if you want to go down to like the canonical psychology of it and like the way you look at it, like I just said, like yeah, he's a little gay, but I don't think he'd sleep with him. You know what? Maybe he would sleep with a man. Who the fuck knows? Like,
no, that's the thing. Also, Robin, his age is a little bit more ambiguous, and like he may not be like 12. He may be like 18 or 16, which is still not great. But at the time, I mean,
he has a little weirdness of like that Michael Jackson thing where it's like, oh, well, he was broken as a child, and he's kind of in this weird Arrested Development.
Yeah, and it's very much like how like Wonder Woman has become kind of a symbol for like, you know, female empowerment, but it's because the guy who wrote it was someone who, as far as I understood, idolized women to the point where like
I can tell you what was up with that guy.
Yeah, like
he was
like 2 wives. Like
he was a psychologist. He's the guy that invented the lie detector test.
Yes. Yeah.
Which is where you get the lasso of truth. And yes, so he was married to a woman, and then they had a partner who was another woman, and I specifically say they had another partner.
Yeah,
and she stayed at home and raised their children, who did not know he was their father until they were adults.
Okay, so yeah, as far as I understood, it was all very consensual.
Yes,
like, there wasn't a level of weirdness to it, and
they just made a movie about it that came out this past year.
Yeah, it's fresh in my mind. Well, it's kind of fresh in my mind, but like, also, what wasn't he of the belief that like the woman was superior?
He was also very much into early age dominatrix, which explains a lot of her stuff as well.
Yeah. So yeah, there's a bunch of weird psychology behind the creation of these characters.
Mm-hmm.
I just and because I later in life became such a bigger DC reader, like I've never stopped to go back and think about the way like Stan would have put thought into, you know, Peter Parker or Tony Stark or Thor, which sucks because like I'm going to start doing that now because he's gone and it makes me feel really shitty. But like honestly, it's not really because of him, but like Marvel has sort of turned me off from.
Yeah, I'm in the same way. The one thing I've heard him talk about Spider-Man is that the way he obviously didn't design the suit, but he did always want a mask. And that's because his idea was that Spider-Man, compared to every other character, is completely covered head to toe. So you can never see who really is underneath the mask. So he is anybody, and he is everybody.
Yeah.
Which is the difference between, like, you know, Batman is white. You know Robin is white. You know Thor is white. You know Wolverine is white. Like, you don't know what Spider-Man is. You don't even know he's a guy.
And like Marvel, and I know a lot of people were like, well, secret identities are dead in the MCU. I'm like, secret identities have been dead in Marvel for kind of
forever.
Yeah,
since Civil War.
People know
they've retconned it.
Yeah. And it's not, the movies didn't kill that, but like, I think Peter's the special one because it's.
But also, most of the characters in the MCU never really had secret identities besides Spider-Man.
Yeah,
like Tony for a while, but then that kind of went away because you can't go with the bodyguard thing forever. Like
no. And like Cap is always like everybody knows who Captain America is.
Right.
Black Widow and Hawkeye are secret agents, so nobody knows who they are, period. It's like they're on front covers.
They can be out in public and know who the fuck they were.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Matt is always, it's always a big deal with Matt, but then his identity gets revealed every like 5 years or whatever.
Yeah.
And then they have to find some way to explain why nobody knows who he is again. So yeah.
I think they did that just so people in the universe can go, the blind guy?
Yeah, most of the characters that have secret identities are like the villains. Because I'm trying to think through like Marvel superheroes. How many of them actually have secret identities? Period.
Yeah, it's just occurring like, who knows outside of the heroes that Norman Osborn is Green Goblin? Like who knows that?
Who knows that Eddie Brock is Venom?
Yeah.
It's mostly the only ones I can think of heroes was Spider-Man, Daredevil, Black Panther.
But the X-Men are a public figure at this point. Like,
well, yes, but like some of their costumes, especially early on,
the Hulk.
Maybe. Yeah, but even then, like enough people him turn back and be like naked Bruce Banner walking around.
That one's way harder to hide.
Yeah, but most of them are like scientists that like they're publishing all their stuff. Like,
a long time ago, Thor had a secret.
Alter ego. What's his name?
Yeah, it was Donald Blake, right? Dr. Donald Blake?
They still
Yeah, Donald Blake, yeah.
Don't they? Or do they not do the Donald Blake thing?
They made a joke of it in the first movie.
Right. And I know in the Ultimates universe, it wasn't really a secret identity, but like people thought that he was crazy.
No, Loki shows up and says, "No, he's my brother. His name is Donald Blake. He just went insane when we tried to make him a superhero and thinks that he is now Thor."
Yeah, but he actually is Thor.
Yes.
Yeah. Which I wasn't really a fan of, but then again, I wasn't really a big fan of much of the Ultimates.
There's a couple of the stuff that's interesting, but then they fucked it all up.
God, what Stan Lee think of the Ultimatum?
I'm sure he had thoughts. Well, because
I'm sure he had.
I would more care about what he thought about what's the spider jizz.
Well, this thing, I'm just remembering this. He did that series of books, and it was around the same time where it was, Stan, what would you do with these characters now? And I can't remember what they were called, but he did like, what would I do if I was starting Spider-Man now? What would I do if I was doing Fantastic Four now?
Something where it's not really a full, like, I don't know if it's an official issue or if it's like an editorial or if it's like a glorified interview / pitch.
But I think I've read this. I think someone
was like, what would you do with DC's heroes? And I
remember seeing that. Yeah.
Yeah, I just can't remember exactly what he said about each one of them. I know, like, what he came up with was, I wouldn't say, like, horrendous, but it was significantly worse than what we have now. Which, like, it's like, they're not his, so he doesn't know what to do with them. They're not his toys.
Did he do was it a Marvel version of DC characters?
Well, they did do that. That's what Hyperion is.
They did that in,
that's the Supreme...
Yeah, fuck, I have it. Hickman's Avengers run. It's on my shelf.
There was a character who only exists in the Marvel universe. No, wait, what am I thinking of?
You think about Hyperion?
I'm thinking back to a Max Landis video. I think it was a Max Landis video where he explained what a character's history was. And he explained it as that this character started out as an alternate universe version of this other character. Oh, I'm so blanking on what this is.
Hyperion, because Hyperion's basically just
he's Superman.
It was the same idea. Like, it was a character who lost his physical body and became another character.
Oh, wait a minute, hold on. Are you thinking of Irredeemable?
No, it's the same basic concept, but it's like he's literally like Reed Richards or something. Like, he's like alternate universe Reed Richards or somebody to that extent.
There is, what the fuck is his name in Ultimate?
Wait, was it
younger Reed Richards with a helmet, and he's basically like, he exists in the 616. Well, this is a fairly new development, so I don't know if this is what the Max Landis video is referring to.
No, maybe. No, this was okay. I know what this was. It was a Death of Superman video. They explained Cyborg Superman. Was that what it was? Oh, I gotta look this up now because
this is interesting. Because like me and Lou said, like, Hyperion is basically
that set of characters, the Squadron Supreme, are the Marvel goof on the Justice League.
And it's funny that because the character Supreme is Image's goof on Superman.
Yeah. And then when the Ultimates came out, they made a current version of the Squadron Supreme, which was actually not bad. But it's Hyperion is a Night Owl, is their Batman. And Professor Light is Green Lantern.
Okay, so Hank
Prism
was an astronaut at NASA until a solar flare hit his space shuttle during an experiment in space, damaging his ship and the crew. Henshaw and his crew found their bodies and had begun to mutate after returning to Earth. Henshaw's entire crew, including his wife, committed suicide. Henshaw was a Reed Richards type character.
Oh my god, the Venture Brothers Fantastic Four?
Yeah. Oh wait, so they're saying like Cyborg Superman's origins
was terrible.
Okay, so yeah, he's clearly like that's what I was thinking of. But yes, he did start off as like a Fantastic Four like take by DC,
like a black comedy version of it.
Yeah, so this was DC doing the Hyperion thing, but Marvel.
Well, they did that all the time to each other.
I do like how both, and this is now becoming much more. But you know what? This is probably what Stan would have wanted anyway. Instead of us talking about him the whole time. I love when comic companies kind of like either directly or indirectly clown each other. Like when you have fucking Deathstroke and Deadpool.
Yeah, it's pretty great.
But this is actually running. We're hitting an hour. Probably have to wrap up soon.
Yeah, we can probably wrap up in
this has been a very all-encompassing episode, but that's fine.
Yeah,
I'm interested to see how the different people in the industry like do a tribute in their books. Like I'm sure DC will do something. Obviously, Marvel's going to do something gigantic.
Yeah, I found a fucking video on YouTube that was made by a goddamn nobody that ripped my guts out because he took clips from like all the current and like famous Marvel movies, like be it Sony, Fox, Marvel, Disney, whatever, and basically like juxtaposed them over like Stan Lee's like last audio recording, like basically a message to like his fans. And it tore me to shreds. And it's like a minute and a half long. I was like, that was way too much all at once. No, I something I'm really bummed about is like Stan won't get to see how Avengers 4 is received.
They did film his cameo for it already, which I like.
I can't fucking believe that he lived to see Infinity War on a screen and saw Thanos come to life. Like
he saw 3 different Spider-Man.
Yes.
Live action Spider-Man.
Yeah. And
got to be in like the Stan Lee in the Spider-Man PS4 game.
Oh, he's the best.
Is like it's a better.
Actually, almost made me cry when like I saw it.
Stan Lee, that cameo is beautiful. And Arlen, I don't know if you've seen it in motion yet. You've probably just seen pictures, haven't you?
Yeah, that's the picture. Yeah.
Basically, Peter and Mary Jane are in a diner and they're talking again for the first time in a while because in the game they've been broken up. They're just having open. Yeah, it's really interesting. They're having open communication. They say, "We'll go to Mix like we used to," which is a diner they used to go to. It's a fry. It's like I don't know. It's like they don't.
It's like a shitty New York diner.
Yeah. And they have a conversation, and Mary Jane says, "Do you remember why we broke up?" And before Peter can answer, he hears a siren, and she goes, "Just go." And she gives him his blessing, and he leaves. And then you hear from the back, Stan Lee fucking walks in and goes, "You two are always my favorites. It's so good to see you back together again." And Nick is the fucking Stan Lee is the fucking fry cook.
Fantastic.
And he has a legit sincere twinkle in his eye that may have been put there digitally. I don't know. But like he has the biggest smile on his face. And it's so sincere and so genuine. I'm like, wow, he is like alive in the fucking game. Like, but I'm glad that he got to do that. But like, it is a bummer that he's not going to be around to see like where this goes because like I think the MCU is something that he could look on and go like, holy shit, like that is me and 2 other dudes in New York are responsible for all this shit.
Yeah. Like he got to see it and Kirby didn't. So it's a little bittersweet, but it's still kind of awesome.
Because he's been seeing this stuff since when was like the first decent one that he was like a cameo in? Fantastic Four or Daredevil?
Well, yeah, he was he's one of the people that sees Senator Kelly come out of the water.
Oh my god! Yeah.
Yes. Oh yeah. So that's the first one, or is it Spider-Man the first one?
It may be the first.
That came out. X-Men came out first. I don't remember his Spider-Man 1 cameo.
He definitely has a cameo in it.
Is he one of the people during the Green Goblin attack?
Yes, he is.
Yes.
I think he makes a hilarious expression while he runs away.
In his Daredevil one, he's the old guy that he pushes out of the way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then in Fantastic Four, the 05 one, he's the mailman. Who was a very famous Fantastic Four character, side character.
I still think that one of my favorite cameos of his is one of his recent ones, and it's an Ant-Man the Wasp. When he drinks, and he just goes, "Well, the 70s were fun, but now I'm paying for them."
So good.
That I do like him in was it Deadpool or Deadpool 2 where he's the stripper DJ?
Yes.
There's an outtake reel of Stan Lee just riffing different lines for that scene in Ant-Man the Wasp. He was improvising.
It makes sense.
So many good ones. Tony Stank.
Or the Ultron one is a great one ttung when he's getting drunk.
That's like an extended cameo because he's there for a couple seconds.
Yeah.
Although his Guardians 2 one is probably like objectively the greatest one because that just confirms what everyone's been hoping this entire time.
Yeah.
That he's a celestial being who's just there to watch.
Yeah. Kids never seen a spaceship before.
Oh, okay. No, that is a fantastic one in Infinity War because like that is how people should react to seeing a spaceship in New York at that point. Aliens show up in the MCU and people go, again?
Mm-hmm.
God damn it. He just cleaned up.
Yeah.
Oh, man. But Stan's legacy is massive, and honestly, we would have to probably fill 3 to 4 hours to really cover as much as we would need to. There's really not much that can be said at this point that hasn't already been said by better and more famous people.
Yeah, no, better people have said it. So yeah. I think there's only one way we can end the show, and I hope you guys are on board, because we should all end by saying Excelsior.
Excelsior.
Hold on. Excelsior.
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 Excelsior. Goodbye, true believers.
Excelsior.
Hi, heroes. This is Stan Lee coming at you. Want you to know, Marvel has always been and always will be a reflection of the world right outside our window. That world may change and evolve, but the one thing that will never change is the way we tell our stories of heroism. Those stories have room for everyone, regardless of their race, gender, religion, or color of their skin. The only things we don't have room for are hatred, intolerance, and bigotry.